that there aren't good things happening in Greenville. If you look around and think about it, you'll know that there is.
Okay, Becky McFadden, 205 Linwood Drive, Greenville, Kentville. I'm here for the Women's Action Group and the Greenville Flower Garden Club. We have been working out in the street, meeting, and we're going to be mulching. And first of all, I do have to thank the streets department because they are very, very helpful to us. They haul away all of our trash, which is a lifesaver to us because two of us will take the bag out to the curb and one person will throw it in the trunk. So they're very helpful to us. We have two things, I have two things I'm going to talk about. Number one, in last month's coverage of the Borough Council meeting, it was brought up, the question was brought up about can council do anything to encourage the care or beautification of the buildings downtown. The Women's Action Group, when we started in 2004, that was our big issue. And the code officer then explained to us the same thing that was discussed at the council meeting. It has to be a safety hazard. Well, while we were weeding up on Main Street yesterday, we took a really good look at a couple of the awnings at the side by H&R Block. They are very deteriorated. The holes are much bigger in them. So we all think if there's a big wind or a bad storm or hail, that those awnings actually could rip and could cause some, hurt somebody who's walking under them or blow into the street or whatever. We think that they have reached the point of public safety hazard. The other thing is, if you look under the awnings, there are some places at two of the businesses on that side of the street where there are cracks and rotting, and those boards that go across the top where the doorway is or the windows, that is definitely a hazard. And I know that because we had a roof cave in at a friend's house because of that kind of damage. The third thing is, one place has had a cracked window for so many years that the Women's Action Group no longer washes their windows. We quit that a few years ago. That window, that crack, it could just collapse anytime. It hasn't, but it is a safety hazard. So those are things that I'm hoping that now Borough Council can use their safety thing to take care of, and that would beautify Greenville. As to the awning, our offer of the Women's Action Group still stands. We've already taken down some awnings, ones that used to be the news depot. Those were taken down by people who volunteered for us to take the awnings down at no cost to the owner. That offer still stands, so they need to come down. And the fourth reason they need to come down is that if you're working on that side of the street or walking on that part of the sidewalk, you get a definite musty, moldy odor that is coming from those awnings. That is a health hazard to anybody who has, asthma or other respiratory weaknesses to be there. So go out and smell it, you'll see. So that's enough about this.
Second, if I could just come before you move on. I'll ask Mr. Patterson to look into the issue you raised. If you would be so kind after the meeting he may know to provide him which property you're going to, not an open session, but outside of the meeting.
I'm skipping out at it.
That's okay.
Okay, so the other thing that really got me to come here is while we were working, we noticed that the pear trees, you may not know this, but the pear trees have never ever been watered since they were planted, nor have the Stellador lilies and those. Those planters were never watered. And it is a miracle that they are still growing. Now, a tree that hasn't been cared for or watered will look healthy for several years and then it'll just die or things will happen to it. Right now, we have noticed that there are curling leaves on pear trees and there are some black spots. And I'm bringing it to the whole council meeting because the Women's Action Group has talked about this every year to different departments, and No one has taken up the cause of the trees. You know, last year, the council talked about hiring an arborist to look at the trees. That's still an option. In Mercer County, there is one arborist. If you contact the master gardeners at Penn State Property Extension, they can give you his name. Or if you don't want to go for the expense of an arborist, there might be a tree expert at a place like Cranax that deals a lot with those kind of trees that can help you. Or you could go to Clarion County. There's a gentleman named Rayburn Smith who taught the Master Gardener class this past year about trees. So and I talked to him about our trees. And he said, they'll just start dying. And people go, oh, what happened to them? But it is because they have never, ever been cared for. They haven't been trimmed, they haven't been watered, they haven't been fertilized, they've been totally ignored. The same for the Stelladora lilies. They need water, and it is a major problem for them. So now that all of you know that problem, perhaps you can come up with a solution. Who is going to water them? How they're going to be watered? All of that. Because the trees are definitely dying. So I think you're right with
Becky, before we
And
move on to
that's
that,
it.
before we move on to that, Jason, you can make it
because it had, you know, I know you talked about it before, but that definitely needs to be done. So that's what we're going to talk about, the trees. Okay. Any questions about the trees or anything?
When you're saying the pear trees, you're talking the ones that are up and down on the
Right,
sides of
and
Main
like,
Street?
I think there's some, in Streetscape 1, they only planted pear trees. In Streetscape 2, they didn't do pear trees, a couple places they used maple trees. Because the other problem with the pear trees is that they will grow very tall. So they are supposed to be trimmed so they don't grow so tall. And again, those awnings up at the top of Main Street, they're interfering with the tree, their conflict of space. So they are a problem. And when I talked about it in our Master Gardener class, one of the suggestions was sell the trees. Tell people that the trees are available for sale, they come to them, call them up, and take them to plant someplace that they can care for and love, instead of being in a cement thing that's not too deep. Because the planters will still have the lilies and other things that if they get water.
Well, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address council?
I wasn't going to say anything, but after I listened to all this here, I get a lot of static. I get how much positive you want to do and what the council wants to do. And Mr. Jason Leary can tell you that over a month ago, I sent him an email on 2 issues. One was on recycling and one was on code enforcement. What do I get? I get thrown out of here last week because you jumped into our argument after the meeting, ushered out by the chief of police. And the thing is, I'm on a list now. He has priorities. What is more important than code enforcement? What is more important than recycling? We have to recycle, don't we? How many tons of beer bottles have went out here in the last month that Mr. Jason hasn't got time to take care of? Because he's too busy. He's busy, but he has the YMCA to take care of the park. He has you and Act 47 counselor to take care of the government. He has the department heads to take care of the department. He has a secretary to take care of it. Now, he's too busy, though, to take care of my complaint. I've had this up for 2 years. I used to get another one, he used to say, we'll look into it. Jason has a word saying, I have priorities. And I get the same thing, nothing. So you can look after something positive, or you want to make something positive. You yourself say, well, you can talk to the counselors anytime you want. That's not true. You better talk to your counselors before you get that issue. And another thing, this is brief. You say you got beat by 10 votes. That's 10 votes from the guy that beat you. But how many from the first place? That'll show you how much you really want.
In a town of 6,000 residents, it really speaks volumes.
Well, how much was it between you and first?
I let you speak, now it's my turn to speak. Now, let me address your points. The council is always willing to listen to concerns, and Mr. Uri is willing to listen to concerns, as was I. But when you become belligerent and threatening to members of staff,
I
that's not...
threaten nobody.
Mr. You're showing it right now. I let you speak and did not interrupt you. I'm just
Yeah, well, don't
asking,
tell me I threatened you, that's what.
I'm just asking for the same courtesy that I need.
Well, don't misrepresent.
Are you finished?
If you're not gonna what I said, and change it, I'm done. If you're not gonna change what I said. I didn't threaten anybody anytime.
I'll let the audience draw their own conclusion on that. But in reference to your complaints, what Mr. Uri was trying to explain to you was, that's not the only issue she had to deal with. He has a number of different issues she's managing, and he's trying to address at various times. And as far as priorities, I'm not going to speak for him, but you do have in any management position set priorities as far as what you take care of and what way you take care of them. But let me share with you what you are concerned about. The issue of recycling of bottles, that is a state act that requires municipalities of our size to recycle. To my knowledge, there is no ordinance on the borough books, and there's no requirement that places upon the borough to enforce recycling. We're mandated under state law. If you have an issue with the fact that it's not taking place, I would encourage you to take it up with the state legislature that wrote the law that stipulated how recycling will take place. As far as your issue of accessibility at one of our establishments, at the manager's request, we had the code office look up the records of that property as far as what took place. So let me address the facts of the situation for you. When the Majestic property did their renovations, they, like anyone else, had to go to the building code officer to get approval. The building code officer at that time for the building construction was Code Sys. So you keep bringing Mr. Patterson into it, but he had nothing to do with the project. When this borough, several years ago, after Mr. Angus and Mr. Wilson left and restructured the position, those are now handled by a third party. Now done by PCI, at that point they were done by Code Sys. When Code Sys reviewed the plans and documents, they signed off and approved. The reason they did, and I will quote from the file for your information, when an alteration affects the accessibility to or contains an area of primary function, the routes of the primary function area shall be accessible. Exception: when the cost of providing the accessible route are not required to exceed 20% of the cost of the alteration affecting the area of primary function. Therefore, an exception is granted. Signed by the code officer of building codes. That's what took place. That's the reason why the plans were reviewed. That's why the gentleman from Code Sys signed off on the property. You may disagree with that. That's the decision that took place. It was not Mr. Patterson's decision. It was not a borough decision. It was done properly under the auspices of his certification as the building code officer. Hopefully, that addresses your question as to why that is not, that doorway is different, or is not a ramp, or however you feel it should be.
That doesn't address it. Mr. Pangus was not the code officer when they started remodeling. I brought that issue up to Mr. Patterson way back then. The very next day, I got a meeting with Mr. Ranella saying, I thought you were my friend. So it went back from the new code officer, and that was after Mr. Pangus's time. This remodeling, again, is less than 20% of what he started with. When they started, that was the very first thing they did was put that step in there. That did not happen with Mr. Pangus's. That was Mr. Patterson's time.
No, and to be clear, as I think I stated clearly, Mr. Patterson was not involved, Mr. Pangus was not involved. This was approved and signed off on by Code Sys, who's a third-party building code officer appointed by the borough. So no, it was not a decision by Mr. Patterson, it was not a decision by Mr. Pangus, it was done by the code office.
When I emailed Mr. Uri, I mentioned 3 businesses, not just the Majestic. And I'll guarantee you that you cannot get into the second one I mentioned with any kind of a system. And another one was done 12 years ago, and he said, well, that's under the grandfather clause. There is no grandfather clause. And that's one of your borough offices.
there anyone else?
Chad Sankey, 1 Alhambra, Greenville, PA. Yesterday afternoon, about 3:30, and I will be brief. I'm going down South Mercer Street, and I look to my left. I'm going into the old steel car, under the underpass, and there was a